Mike Hurst is a former U.S. attorney and also current State GOP Chairman. Mike, one of the reasons for that, he comes from the private sector. It's my belief. Here's a guy who makes decisions that have consequences on him at the millions, if not billions of dollars. He understands the pressure of making decisions and the time factor of making decisions. This is something that you don't have when you have a career politician who has to evaluate, what is this going to do to my next election? What's this going to do to my funding base?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you got...
We don't give him credit for that.
No, we don't. And just as you said, Paul, we have one politician who's been in elective office for 50 years who deliberates and thinks and processes. Let me rephrase that. Used to deliberate, think, and process. As Trump observed, I don't at the debate. I don't know how much Biden is doing that, sadly, anymore. But you also have President Trump, a man who's been in the private sector his entire life, except for those 4 years he was president, who makes almost instantaneous decisions, and those decisions were financial. Now the decisions, as General Kellogg stated, is these decisions are life or death.
Yeah.
And so we have to have a president. We have to have a chief executive officer who can make those decisions, who has the clarity of mind, who has the mental faculties to respond at 1 a.m., to respond as the proverbial midnight phone is ringing to threats. Because this is not are we going to make money, lose money? This is literally life or death.
Yeah. I want you to hear this next cut here, because this one just blew me away. And I set this out yesterday. And if you haven't become part of the X post of a family, please join me at Paul Gallo Show. But listen to this.
We have lost 7 United States embassies under his presidency.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So we have embassies all over the world in every country. That is essentially sovereign American territory. Under his watch, we have had to evacuate 7 United States embassies.
I did not know that.
That has never happened in American history.
Why haven't we heard it? Why wasn't that part
because the media,
of the narrative?
The media is
Trump
protecting
brought
this man
out during the debate itself, didn't you? I mean, I didn't realize this. She didn't realize this,
right.
and Sage Steele is pretty well checked out on what's going on worldwide. But
I mean,
it's the first time I've heard that.
The world has never been a more dangerous place, and especially in terms of our enemies to the United States. I mean, look at China. China is building and expanding bases 90 miles off of our coast in Cuba. Iran is continuing
holding exercises.
Have lost.
Let me go back to
United States embassies under his presidency.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So we have embassies all over the world in every country. That is essentially sovereign American territory. Under his watch, we have had to evacuate 7 United States embassies.
I did not know that.
That has never happened in American history.
That's how weak we are.
That's how weak we are on the world stage. That's how bad it is.
Okay.
Wait, let me clarify. This is Wesley Hunt from Texas, Congressman Hunt, and also Congressman Byron Donald. So you'll know who's talking.
Okay.
Sage.
Help me. Why has that happened? Why are we evacuating?
When you are weak and our adversaries know you're weak, they push you. It's no different than the bully in the schoolyard. If you're timid and the bully knows he can get away with it, what happens? He comes for your lunch money every single week.
Yes.
Every single day.
Until you punch back.
Until you punch back. We have been weak under Joe Biden. And so our adversaries around the globe, big and small, know that they can push us.
I'll give you my favorite President Trump story. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him that.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Sure did.
Do you know for 18 months not a single American was killed in Afghanistan? That's the definition of strength. That's what I'm talking about.
And so you could imagine that kind of sentiment being around the world. If we have an embassy in another country, no one's going to touch it because they're going to be fearful that they'll get a Moab on their head. That's how President Trump rolls. This is the opposite of strength. This is the definition of weakness.
Anger at the people who had done character assassination for a guy. If we were hiring and we voted for this guy to take that job, and screw Paramount Pictures, you couldn't get a better script than that.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, isn't it? I mean, that shows you.
Have you heard this story before?
Yeah, I did see that interview with Congressman Hunt and Congressman Donalds.
Okay, but before that, have you seen?
No.
Have you heard that?
No, absolutely not.
Have you heard anything about the 7?
No. That's the
embassies?
First time I've heard about both of those issues.
And this is I'm not sure when that interview was. If it was recent.
It was recent. Yeah, it was recent.
I think it was recent because it's just online now.
Yeah.
We've been cheated out of that. And I think that's sad because we need that type of leadership in that office. And God knows where we could have been right now.
Right. Yeah.
In the United States of America with 4 more years or 7 years now of that leadership.
Yeah, the good thing about President Trump and re-electing President Trump is he's bringing back that Reagan motto of peace through strength. I mean, that's what he's all about, and that story encapsulates it perfectly. Yeah. And what we've had over the last 3.5 years is what I would probably term, victimhood through weakness, because this mentality of this administration is to continue to weaken America. America is bad. Our adversaries see that and take advantage of that, just as Congressman Hunt and Donald said, and because of that, we have this victimhood mentality. And I spoke to someone yesterday. The clear distinction between Democrats and Republicans is we Republicans believe in personal responsibility. We're going to hitch up our pants and pull up our bootstraps, and we're going to get things done. That Toby Keith song is dead on after 9/11. And the Democrats' perception is, well, we don't want to offend anybody. We want to. The government needs to help us do this. I mean, that's not how this country was founded. That is not what made America exceptional. And that's why this slogan that President Trump has, and frankly, I would tell you, it's a slogan that Ronald Reagan had in his campaigns, is we as Republicans want to make our country great again. Yeah. And there's no, if you oppose that, yeah, absolutely.
At a time when other countries are looking at us, and when the word goes into the Chinese military, well, if we plan anything, let's make sure we do it after 6 o'clock at night.
Well, and let's just send all of our, spies and our soldiers across the border, because there is no border in America.
I want to ask you when we come back what you think of the ruling from the Supreme Court, being a noted attorney, how that figures into everything. There was another revelation on Judge Mershon. If anybody could screw up decisions, he did it. I do not understand why there's not some method for the Supreme Court to look at this and say, son, all of you screwed up so badly, this is thrown out. But we got to wait for that a little bit later on. More coming up with Mike Hurst right after this. And tomorrow, Mike Hurst in the house, former U.S. attorney and also current state GOP chair. One opening quick shot here. 11-year-old girl in Michigan has suffered some significant injuries after an illegal device exploded in her home. Her name was Caitlin. She lit a device she thought was in the house because it was the 4th of July. Soon after lighting it, she realized maybe this is not a normal fireworks device. She tried to stop it. She ran it under the water of a bathroom sink, but it was too late and it exploded. Turns out it was a stick of dynamite.
Oh.
Blew up her hand, her right hand and forearm had to be amputated. Caitlin's now said to be in high spirits. Family is doing the best we can. Investigators currently believe the device was the property of her grandfather, who left it in plain view and unsupervised. Grandpa was arrested, but the prosecutor opted to not press charges. stick of dynamite. Kids need to probably never seen it before and said, "Oh, what a big firecracker!" But all right, we have a little update. The president says the reason for his lackluster performance. Did you hear the reason?
I don't know if I did.
It was not a cold. The reason for his presidential underperforming was he was experiencing jet lag caused by international travel, despite returning from his last trip nearly 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
I'm not even sure.
If we made this up, Paul, no one would believe it, but this is coming directly from the President of the United States. I heard one commentator say if the performance we saw by President Biden last Thursday night was after a week of seclusion, rest, and preparation for that performance, how much worse is his day-to-day activities and functioning as President of the United States?
Yeah. And who was pulling the strings when he was in the airplane hangar for this long?
Right.
In a way, it's Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings is a consultant for CNN. He was in the Republican Party.
Long-time Republican operative, yep.
Yeah, he's been there for quite a while. And this is an amazing cut. I won't play the whole thing, but just an amazing cut of this is where he is on the stage with Paul Begala. Paul Begala is eaten up with liberalism, of course. That's his life. So where he makes his money. But normally, if Scott and Paul are together, Paul won't let him get 3 words in, kind of like me. But that Paul won't let him get 3 words in on the left. But man, he didn't say a word to interrupt Scott Jennings, which means he is on cue with everything going on as far as bashing Biden now.
Joe Biden, after cannonballing into an empty swimming pool on Thursday night, came out and spoke for 4 minutes off of a teleprompter. He's good for 4 minutes today, as long as somebody else wrote it. After having this completely tone-deaf sort of announcement coming out of this meeting with his family, where his son, the notorious influence peddler and crack addict, Hunter Biden, says, you got to keep going. This entire thing since Thursday has been one tone-deaf political disaster after another. He comes out and attacks the Supreme Court and says, oh, the president can now do whatever he wants. The same guy, by the way, whose centerpiece of his speeches is, the Supreme Court tried to stop me. They blocked me, but they'll never stop me on student loans. I don't know what they are doing because they don't know what they're doing, and no one in America knows what they're doing, and that's why Donald Trump's beating his brains in right now.
Jake Tapper says that there are some meetings set up or probably going on this weekend. Democratic governors appear to be stepping up and trying to form some type of a pack, and they had a secret call yesterday about Biden's campaign, according to CNN's Jake Tapper. As far as the Supreme Court decision...
Well, before we leave that, Paul, let me just say, I did read a report where now Hunter Biden is showing up at the White House for meetings with the president and his staff. So now we have Hunter Biden. Let's make this even worse. Like, we have a president who's not in his right mind, but now let's put his son, as Scott just said, his crack addict, peddler influencing son in the room to make official actions and decisions. This is absolutely insane.
It is. Well, and I can understand this. If you have a guy who is with a mental acuity that Joe Biden has, but he has that emotional load to know if I leave, I don't have those pardon rights for my son.
Right. And frankly, if I leave, I don't have all those income streams from my son either.
Absolutely. That's over, and he knows that. But with all the things going on as far as and I have it here somewhere here. I'm going to thumb through this to see if I can find it. But what do you think about that Supreme Court decision that basically says immunity is there with official business? And what are your thoughts about what's the process going to do? And will it change this, weaken that decision, or what when it goes back to the lower courts?
I think that decision was in line with what probably most Americans believe. We've had on the books a decision by the Supreme Court, Nixon v. Fitzgerald, for almost 40 years, where President Nixon was sued after he left office for for a civil lawsuit. And the Supreme Court says, no, presidents have absolute immunity from civil lawsuits for official actions taken. I mean, this is in line with that precedent. And frankly, this is what we as Americans...
I hate to interrupt you, but let me just ask, how long does that last post your presidency when you're former president?
It lasts forever because you're making decisions in your official capacity as president. We as Americans do not want presidents to worry about, well, you know, if I make this decision, the public might not like it, and maybe the next president comes back and tries to criminally prosecute me. I mean, that's not what we want as Americans, is for a president to start second-guessing what is in the best interest of the country.
Okay, which of these charges against Donald Trump would you think are exceptions to that rule? Because there is a nexus to all of them. Certainly the classified documents, that's a no-brainer.
Well, the question I think the Supreme Court came up with, or the decision the Supreme Court came up with, was it has to be official acts. So it has to be something core to the presidency and our constitutional form of government, which would include intelligence, which include military, national security, things like that. It's not unofficial acts. It's not private things that the president does. And so, you know, if it gets sent back to the court, I mean, I can't sit here and tell you what any judge or any court's going to do with this case. But if there are acts that the court decides legally are not, you know, official presidential acts, but instead are private actions. You know, one allegation that I think that Jack Smith has made is that President Trump hired private attorneys to try to set up these alternate electors. You know, I think Jack Smith can argue that that's a private action that the president took. Whether that's successful, I don't know, but that's the type of arguments you're going to hear from the prosecution.
Sentencing in Trump's criminal hush money case was postponed until September the 18th. We got that word yesterday, sentencing for the president, former president. Manhattan DA, their office said yesterday that it's not going to oppose Trump's request to argue that his hush money conviction should be thrown out after Monday's Supreme Court ruling, so we'll see what happens with that one. But by the way, yesterday we also learned that Judge Merchan erred in excluding evidence of Trump's reporting of a loan from Michael Cohen, evidence that would have shown the matter was personal and not related to the election, therefore not subject to the campaign finance laws. This judge did everything he could to get a conviction, even to the point where this is also up for question. I guess you would like to have some judges rule this way in some of the cases that you were in. Look, come on. Do we need 12, Judge? Can we get 3 people on? Would that be okay for a conviction? How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't think we have enough time this morning, Paul. There are so many issues with that trial and so many questions as to why the judge did what he did. I think the Trump legal team is going to have a field day when it comes to appealing that case. Now, whether it's successful in New York State court, that's a whole other matter, but there are so many issues that they could raise as to reversible error.
You think they'll put him in jail?
You know, I don't. And maybe that's just me being naively hopeful, and that this judge, who doesn't have the best track record with this case, will actually follow the law. I mean, look, the president has no criminal history. This is a white-collar crime. But New York is bizarro land, right? They don't put violent criminals in jail, but now they're trying to put white-collar person in jail.
Took Giuliani's law license away in New York City, which was an absolute crime. I'm going to ask you when we come back your gut feeling who the vice president's going to be, nominee under or the named under Trump, when we come back in a moment or two. Gut feeling now, just the gut feeling. Back in a moment with Mike Hurst. Hang on.
I walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job.
Well, I wonder how many people they paid to get into that studio or wherever that happened to be.
We beat Medicare. I think that's what he said.
We beat Medicare. What a great comeback from Donald Trump. Beat the heck
No
out
troops
of it.
died during my presidency. I mean, I could keep going. I mean, this is crazy that's how he tries to save his debate performance.
Hopefully, we will not be future generations reading what is happening as we speak in ashes. But in my mind, and this is a business I've chosen to spend my life in, I think one of the great culprits, if there is a requiem for the United States of America, is going to be the corrupt media. I mean, you cannot have a free society without it. And they have been so co-opted, and it hasn't been something I think that was just culturally destined. People like George Soros who put millions and millions of dollars in this thing. And it was exacerbated by technology that's coming in to also be as corrupt, whether it was Twitter back then or the Facebooks and things like that of today. And when we go back and we look at it, at how we are now, either far right and talking points for the right or talking points for the left. News is not news; it's all opinion, and it's one way or the other. And there's no way to come together on that one.
Yeah.
And I came to that conclusion, Mike, when we had a story or a research on quick shots. This has been several years ago, where we always say, yeah, I like to listen to CNN for a few minutes or a little while so I can see what the other side's doing. That was a bald-faced lie. By percentages up to the 74, 75%, three-quarter percentile, you had people who said, no, I don't ever listen to them because I can't stand them. I don't want to listen to them. And, I mean, that was just the natural tendency, and I tend to agree. I could take it maybe 3 minutes, and that's it.
Well, you can take it longer than I can.
Yeah. Gut feeling, vice presidential nominee.
Wow. I mean, again, it's all over the board. The thing that I love is that the Trump campaign right now is not rolling out the vice president pick. I mean, right now, the Democratic Party is in free fall. They're in chaos, and to do anything that would divert the American public from the dumpster fire that is the Democratic Party right now should be avoided at all costs. You know, we're about 15 days away from the Republican vice presidential candidate speaking at the RNC National Convention. And, you know, you got a number of great candidates. Tim Scott from South Carolina, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio. Some have talked about Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, governor of Arkansas, Doug Burgum, the former governor of North Dakota. You know, really, Paul, my gut feeling would probably be Tim Scott right now. And I just say that because he is an incredible man. He has an incredible story. Right now, President Trump is polling with the African American community almost 3 times the support that he got just maybe a year ago. And so I think Tim Scott brings a lot to the table. His story is just absolutely incredible. And I think he would do a great job. I mean, look, and I say that being a Marco Rubio supporter in 2016. I was for Rubio then. I came out. I was one of his co-chairs here in Mississippi. Yep. Obviously, I was an alternate to the RNC convention in 2016 for Donald Trump once he had the votes here in Mississippi. But Rubio would make an incredible pick as well. But
you got to solve that Florida situation.
That's exactly right.
One of the which can be done.
It can be. It can be. And
I don't think people would be that displeased if he were. The only thing, and I love Tim, don't get me wrong. Tim is a great leader, I think, in behind the desk. I'm not sure if he is that stump speaker that is needed, but we'll see. My gut feeling was, and it hit me last night, and I'm not for or against any of these people, other than Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley would be a bad choice, but that's just another story. I just had a gut feeling for some reason all of a sudden, and Will and I stayed up last night for some odd reason. It was going to be Governor Sanders. and I don't know why.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Sometimes gut feelings could have been that hoagie sandwich.
Well, I think the only person in the world that knows is Donald J. Trump.
You got that right. Always enjoy, my man.
Yeah, thank you.